we talk about any supplement, we have to really consider a couple of things. One of them is going to be the effectiveness of said supplement. So is the supplement going to work? Also, we have to look at the cost point. So if it works, cool, how much of it is it going to cost us? If it's not that effective but it's very costly, should we take the supplement? Yeah, probably not. So if we're looking at something like creatine, the cost is very low. The effectiveness with widely researched studies is very effective. So it lands somewhere around there on the graph. Now, if you're looking for something like a greens powder, the research isn't too good on something like this. We can't really absorb it very well, but the cost of it is very, very high. So it would probably land somewhere around here on the chart. So you see the contrast. You see creatine's a great supplement for hypertrophy. Greens powder, not so much. So again, we can really use something like this to determine whether we should actually buy a supplement or whether it's actually needed for hypertrophy. Let's just say, for example, you're a uni student and you've got limited money, and the supplement isn't that effective but the cost is high, then we just throw that out. If you have loads and loads of money and it's kind of got marginal gains, then you could chuck it in. So it's person dependent, but I'm going to take you through my supplement list. And again, even though that I'm sponsored by a supplement company, please note that you do not need any of these supplements. You can get away with pretty much none of these. These will provide such marginal gains, but I thought that was worth throwing in there. First on the supplement list is going to be my morning kind of supplement. So I wake up, have a coffee, have some water, etc. You can class coffee as caffeine, which is a supplement, but we can dive through that later on. But the three that I normally just wake up and take are going to be krill oil, which is going to be kind of heart health, etc. I don't eat a lot of fish in my diet, so I just supplement with this. I also have vitamin D3. I think it actually has K2 in it as well. But this time of year is very important to supplement due to a couple of things. Number one, the UV is very, very low, so we can't actually absorb vitamin D very well. Also, even if there was a high kind of UV emission, we would be covered up because it's cold, obviously. So we'd wear like a hoodie, we'd wear like a jacket, etc. So we wouldn't actually be able to absorb vitamin D very well. Now, on the cost to effectiveness chart, vitamin D would lie around here. So the effectiveness is high, the cost is reasonably low, and krill oil, that would be just above it. It's slightly more expensive, slightly less effective than vitamin D. Also, we have vitamin C, which is, again, very cool supplement. People assume that vitamin C is taken to reduce getting a cold. It's not actually one of the kind of uses for it. The reason why I have it daily is if I do have a cold, I can reduce the length of the cold. We have multiple studies suggesting that. So again, people will assume that it's actually to prevent colds. It's not. It's actually to just reduce the length of said cold. Vitamin C, again, a daily beta for me. The cost is extremely low and effectiveness would probably be the midway point here. But again, it's not necessarily to reduce the cold, it's to just reduce the length of it. Now that was the AM, so what I just normally take when I wake up. We now can move into kind of the daily betas, so things I take like during the day or whatever. Number one is going to be creatine. We spoke about the effectiveness of creatine. The cost to effectiveness is very good. So that's something that I take daily. 5 grams of this per day. I don't load it or anything. I just take 5 grams per day to saturate the kind of creatine levels in my system. It's naturally occurring, but we can use this supplement to kind of boost training performance, etc. So yeah, 5 grams daily. From there, we can also move on to whey protein. I actively do not have enough protein in my diet. I just don't necessarily reach for protein. So something like that, just kind of have it in a scoop and just kind of down it is very easy and effective for me. The cost is actually quite high for, like, the effectiveness is good. So it's quite high on the effectiveness score, but in terms of cost, some would say it's quite expensive. However, if you actually break down per serving, this would actually be cheaper than most of your protein sources. So I suppose it would be like mid cost and very high on the effectiveness score. So we established creatine, that would be around here, and whey protein, that would be around here. Now we can talk about things like nootropics, which are quite effective, but they're not necessarily like a training boost. They are like productivity and work boost, and the cost of them is quite high. So this is where you say, look, you don't really need this supplement, but something like a nootropic would be very beneficial if you are kind of on the computer all day, or you just need to be focused for what you're doing. But again, on the effectiveness score, cost would be quite high, effectiveness like to the midway point. And again, we touched on the greens powder. We can't necessarily absorb most of what's in a greens powder, unfortunately. So the cost is going to be very, very high. I think that tub is like 40 quid. So it's going to be very high and the effectiveness is going to be very low. So to me, that supplement is really not necessary for hypertrophy. Now we can talk about the training aspect of supplements. So pre-training, I would take this if I was training in the AM, and this if I was training in the PM. The only difference is one has caffeine in it and this one does not have caffeine in it. So the main kind of boost from kind of a pre-workout isn't necessarily going to be like beta-alanine and citrulline mannate. They do help, they have some performance benefits, but caffeine is going to be the big winner here. So if you want to really boost training performance, have caffeine. Of course, there will come a point where you cannot have caffeine, otherwise it will affect your sleep. If you affect your sleep, you'll affect the next day's training performance, you'll affect the next day's training performance after that. So we have to be fairly smart. Do you take the short-term wins and have caffeine because you're not feeling that great? You have caffeine and then your training performance that day is okay, the next day is crap, the next day is crap. So it's kind of a negative feedback loop, because you feel tired the next day, then you need caffeine, then you can't sleep, and then you have more caffeine. So yeah, it's a bit of a shit show. But if you train in the PM like me, you could, let's just say for example you train at 5 o'clock, you could have a caffeine hit at like 12 o'clock and that wouldn't affect sleep. You would actually have some sort of caffeine kind of benefits, performance benefits. Caffeine doesn't necessarily just kind of go into your body and kind of you use it. It actually takes quite a while for the whole thing to use. So if you take it at like 12, you would have some kind of performance benefits at like 5 o'clock. So what I do is do that and then have some pump formula which has kind of beetroot extract, which would be very good for kind of vasodilation. Also has the same stuff in here. You got kind of beta-alanine, you have citrulline mannate, glycerol, etc. So that is what I normally take pre-workout, or if I'm training in the AM, I take this. Speaking of that, it's time to train. Well, that got dark. See, we went through the AM supplements, the kind of health supplements, the things I take daily, specifically in the morning, right? And then we went through like creatine and whey protein, things I, again, take throughout the day. Now I'm going to take you through the things I take daily, but in the PM. These are more going to be specifically setting me up to have good sleep, right? So we'll get straight into it. So supplement number one that I'll have PM is going to be some ashwagandha. Pretend I have some ashwagandha in my hand. It's currently in an Amazon depot waiting to get shipped to me tomorrow. But right now I don't have any. So I'll have that post-workout, 500 milligrams typically. So I'll have that around 6 o'clock, and then I'll have my meal, and then I'll have around 500 milligrams 30 minutes prior to bed. It has properties to reduce anxiety, which in turn would increase your sleep quality. So yeah, on the cost to effectiveness score, you're looking at like the midway point for the cost, and then effectiveness is going to be around like 3/4 of the way there. So that's my number one, or my first supplement, or first PM supplement I will take, specifically immediately post-workout and prior to bed. Supplement number two that I normally take, and again this is going to be 30 minutes prior to bed, not post-workout, is going to be magnesium biglycinate. Now, we don't, us bodybuilders don't really have that much magnesium in our diet, and again this has some studies suggesting we can increase our sleep quality. I normally have around 500 meg, so again, like for kind of the pre-bed, 30 minutes prior to bed, I've immediately got 500 milligrams of magnesium biglycinate, and I've also got 500 milligrams of ashwagandha. In terms of the cost to effectiveness, it's probably around, again, it's probably about the same as ashwagandha to be fair. Effectiveness is probably about 3/4 of the way, and cost is about the midway point. This is not really a supplement, but it's definitely something that I take. I suppose it is a supplement. Either way, hay fever tablets. Now, the reason why I flag this, and I think I've mentioned this in previous vlogs, is the fact that hay fever tablets tend to make you feel drowsy, so there's little point in having something that makes you feel drowsy in the AM, especially if you're training in the AM or training in the day. So what I will do is have that kind of late at night, which, again, if I want to feel drowsy, then I might as well do it when I'm going to bed, right? Kind of makes sense. On the cost to effectiveness score, the cost is sky high. Like right the way to the top. It's ridiculous. They're just killing me for being allergic to tree sperm. But the effectiveness is good. It sorts my nut out. It sorts my nose out. How the hell can you block this nose? It's massive. Look at the size of it. How the hell can you block this nose? Well, just put me near a tree, apparently. God damn it. And last but certainly not least is going to be calms. Specifically, this is going to have valerian extract in it, which again is kind of a sedative, so it's kind of got similar properties to like melatonin. So if you're trying to, it's very, very good for something like jet lag. So if I'm feeling very kind of anxious and I'm feeling like my body clock is kind of out of sync, then I'll whack that in. That's definitely not something that I'll take every single day. That's definitely something that if I feel a little bit kind of tired, if I feel like I've got a lot of life stress going on, I'll definitely take that. But generally what I take every single day is going to be the magnesium biglycinate, it's going to be ashwagandha and the hay fever tablet. And then again, if my sleep kind of is gone to poo, like maybe like overreaching week, then I'll just chuck in the calms, which is valerian extract. So yeah, on the cost to effectiveness score, to be honest, the cost is very, very low. Effectiveness is all the way to the top, but don't become too dependent on that. I really want to stress that you shouldn't become kind of overly dependent on that or melatonin. But yeah, supplements, bish. So yeah, they're the supplements that I go for. You can go off that kind of effectiveness to cost kind of graph, and you can assess whether you're financially in a situation to buy certain supplements and whether you would benefit from any of them at all. If you don't, then obviously don't buy them. But that's mainly like, understand what supplements are. They're going to be supplementing from your training, nutrition, etc. So get these kind of things in place first before you start going right into supplements. But again, do we need supplements? No. Could they help? Some of them can.